Real Talk with a Realtor. It's Lindsay Knapp. Hi, how's it going? We are talking today about the transaction train. What goes into a smooth transaction? What goes into any transaction? Because not all transactions are smooth, not all of them are the same, but there is a way to keep ticking things forward, or there's a way to jump off the train. So let's talk today about the transaction train. We're going to come from a buyer's perspective on this particular topic. So if you are a buyer and you have been on the house hunt for a while, the first stop on your train ride is going to be to a lender. You're going to get pre-approved. You want to make sure that there is a lender out there that is willing to lend you money if you have some type of financing that is needed for this transaction. So you can call around and find out who will pre-approve you. Lenders do not have to be your home bank. So where you do all of your banking, they might become your lender. They might be the person who actually gets you the money for a loan for the house or a mortgage, but not necessarily. And it doesn't have to be. You can shop around for a lender. You can shop around for a mortgage company. And you may find that lenders and mortgage companies have different products available to you, sometimes based on your credit, based on the market. They can offer different interest rates. So never just settle with talking to one lender. Also, one thing to note about your first stop on the train as a buyer is your lender works for you. You are definitely going to have to cooperate with your lender to provide information to them, but your lender works for you. So you are able to hire them as your lender. And that is a really good way to frame how you're looking at things because it gives you permission to talk to several different lenders before you land on who you're going to be working with. And I would recommend talking to 2 to 3 lenders based on different products that people are available that are available on the market. Sometimes there's grants. Sometimes there are, all sorts of things. Okay, so we're actually going to interview lenders next week, and I will give you some of their top advice for buyers in this market right now. Super helpful to have lender friends. So, okay, first stop for a buyer, go get pre-approved and get a pre-approval letter. So with your pre-approval letter, that means that you know exactly how much you can spend or what your budget is on looking for a house. So you can begin shopping with your buyer's agent. A buyer's agent, a really good one, is going to take into account all of your search parameters, your search criteria. They're going to take into account your budget. They're going to take into account further they're going to kind of go the extra mile and study the region of where it is that this particular property is. What are the schools like? What is the crime rate like? What types of foodie restaurants are around? What kind of grocery stores? How far is it to a really good commute system? What is transportation like? All of those things are going to be taken into consideration as a buyer is beginning to show you properties in different areas. Okay. Next stop on the buyer's train is they find the gem, the place of their dreams. And lo and behold, it's within their budget. They make an offer. Now that offer is accepted, and here we go, beginning to move along a more intentional track, shall we say, on this particular transaction train. So the moment that an offer is accepted, by contract, deadlines begin to tick away. Now, what are those deadlines? Typically speaking, for a buyer, it's going to be earnest money first. So, again, most people will put down about 1% of the price point or the asking price, 1% of the offer price in earnest money. That's typically going to be delivered to the title company or the listing agent's office within 3 to 5 business days so that you are securing your spot in this transaction. So you have purchased your ticket to get on board. That earnest money will stay in holding and it will contribute towards your final closing costs. So it's just kind of this down payment, this little deposit that says I've got skin in the game and I'm serious about this transaction and here is the money to show that. Once the earnest money is delivered, there's a couple of other deadlines that begin to tick away. The automated clock begins to tick away. So what are they? Well, it is all determined by the types of contingencies that are in the contract. So if you're a buyer, then your buyer's agent, if they are a very good buyer's agent, they have recommended that you do not purchase this property without an inspection. So that's the first contingency that comes into play on the transaction train. You have put in an offer. The offer's been accepted. You've put in your earnest money down payment, and now we're going to head into the inspection contingency. This is on a deadline as well, so you want to make sure to get these things on the calendar as soon as possible. Your agent is going to be reminding you, hey, this deadline's coming up. But you want to make sure you hire a really qualified inspector, not one who is a fear-mongering inspector, but someone who can give you educated information about problem solving and about the extent of the problem. Okay, any problem can be solved. If a problem cannot be solved, it becomes a predicament. And a predicament is something out of your control, and that is probably the moment that you should decide to exit the train. Okay, so home inspectors are typically going to give you an overall general review of, hey, I see this, and I see this. These are all things that you should be made aware of. And on the top priority level, it actually needs immediate attention, or it needs further inspection from an expert inspector. So a general inspector is going to take a look at your roof, for example. They might notice a little sag in the roof, and they'll say, we think this could be a structural issue. We're not really sure unless we were to do some digging. I would recommend that you get an expert roofer inspector out here, or a structural engineer inspector out here to really take a look at this. So because inspectors may often recommend an expert inspection in any particular area, plumbing, electrical, flooring, roofing, siding, you want to get your general inspection in as soon as you can, because those expert inspections may need to follow, and they all need to get crunched into that time frame, that deadline time frame. So after you get all of your information as a buyer and it comes back, and let's just say for the sake of idealism, it comes back squeaky clean. And so you think, great, we have got ourselves a great house. This inspection report is brilliant. It's shining. The only thing that we need to worry about is adding a carbon monoxide detector. Great. That's something that you can go back and negotiate with your seller and say, hey, would you mind adding that carbon monoxide detector? Or if it's not that big of a deal, you just continue to move forward with the transaction knowing we will add the carbon monoxide detector. Okay? So that is contingency number 1, inspection. The next stop on the contingency train, and again, it all has to do with what you wrote in your contract. You know, what are the things that are required of the buyer and the seller contingency-wise within the contract? If you wrote in that you want an inspection before you purchase the house, that's number 1. You may have a financing contingency. That means that your bank has to approve giving you the money for this particular house. And when that is the case, when your bank is saying, yeah, we do want to work with you, we want to give you a loan, but first we need to know a couple of things. Okay, so the banker, the lender, the mortgage company is going to say, we will lend you the money. However, first we need to make sure that this house is worth what they're asking. And that's called an appraisal. So the appraisal contingency comes into effect to show the lender that they are justified in giving you the loan in order to purchase the house, because it does value out. So they're going to order that an appraiser comes through. Now, you may have heard the word appraisal and assessment. These are 2 A words in real estate. The appraisal is actually handled by an appraiser who has gone to a certification course a lengthy one with lots of measurements and lots of numbers to appraise a property. And they are basically giving you a set value of that property based on their evaluation. Now, you can always get second opinions on an appraisal. You can get third opinions on an appraisal. But often speaking, the appraisal is going to be kind of that baseline standard of what the house is worth. So that is contingency stop number 2, is making sure that this house is worth what you're asking for. If it's not, there are options. If your appraisal comes in low, you can always drop the price to meet the appraisal, or you can just ask that the buyer who is in love with the house and they don't really care that the appraisal price is low, brings the difference to closing. There's ways of working through it and ticking along to the next station. Okay, one of the last and most common contingencies is a home sale contingency. So if you're a buyer and you want to buy a house, but you have to sell your house first, that's a home sale contingency. And that is often written into the contract. We need to sell our house before we buy this house because we're going to use the proceeds from our house to purchase this new house. And all of that is in writing in the contract, but it is another stop on the transaction train. So when that house is finally sold, you can move forward with the procurement of a new house. But if it doesn't sell, what happens? Well, that's when the transaction train starts to slow down a bit, and you may end up losing the deal. So time crunches, these are the stressors of real estate transactions, is that it is under a time crunch and you are under a deadline. And so with really proper use of agency, a buyer's agent sometimes will employ a transaction coordinator. A lot of these things, if you will view this as a little bit of a marathon, from the moment that you have an accepted offer, now we have to tick through these boxes. You cannot let your foot off the gas. You've got to apply a lot of energy into getting these things done if you want to see this transaction work through smoothly. And you need people who are actually teaming up with you. Your agent, your lender, the agent that might be selling your house. All of those things need to be working cohesively together. And you need to listen to their truthful and honest advice about how to do things. So it really is a team effort across the board. Now, ideally, you sell your home if you have a home sale contingency. You use the funds to procure this new home and you go to a closing. Well, at the closing, the title company is going to be there because you're going to need to make sure that the deed is in your name. And the title company has a lot of other types of things like gap endorsements and things like that need to be signed off on. The title company is basically there to make sure that there are no checks or debts or liens against the property that have not been satisfied, so that you don't inherit something that has debt in it. So it's really just to give you a clean title, meaning you own the house and there's not a contractor out here that needs to be paid for work done by the former owner. So those are the types of things that title will be taking care of, and ideally they're doing it all prior to closing. So how long should you expect for a house to close? For how long does it take for the transaction train to go from an approved offer, an accepted offer, all the way through to closing? Typically speaking, between the inspection, the earnest money, the financing, the appraisal, the title, it takes about 30 days. So sometimes you can close earlier than that, but a lot of times these things are trekking along and giving a little bit of room to maybe updates that need to be made, reparations that might need to be made before closing. You just want to make sure there's a little bit of breathing room for both parties to find each other in what they are understanding the transaction to be. I thought I was buying a house that had carbon monoxide detectors in it. Well, give us time and we'll make sure that you are. So that is the transaction train in a very simple Thomas the Train dumbed down version for those of you who are kind of like, wait, I thought we had an accepted offer. Why is this taking so long? Well, there's still a couple of hoops to jump through. And with the right agent, it can be seamless. And it can actually build a lot of confidence. If you have an agent working through the transaction with you, a good agent is going to be in constant communication with you, making sure that you understand what's been crossed off the list, what is coming down the pipeline and needs to be crossed off the list, what your homework is and what your role is in maybe hiring a contractor, talking to a contractor, making sure that the work is complete. And you're not going to be left alone to kind of sort it out on your own. If you're in the middle of the transaction train and you haven't talked to your agent in a while, it doesn't really feel like a team effort. So make sure that when you are hiring a buyer's agent, or if you are wanting to list your house, that you feel really confident that they are going to communicate with you in a fluid way, in a consistent way, and in a very honest, truthful way. This is how transactions run smoothly. So if you are interested in more information on what makes a good lender and what makes a good buyer's agent, I've got a document that I can send you so that you have a bit of a checklist when you're interviewing your lender and you're interviewing your buyer's agent. All you have to do is write qualifications down in the comment section below. Thanks so much.